Test. Can you hear me now? White chocolate? Hopefully you guys can hear me now. It looks like we might have fixed it. It's always audio difficulties with these streams and these videos. That's the hardest part in making content, is messing around with the audio. Oh, he said he can hear us now. Well, that was exciting.
Yay!
Well, for those of you just turning in, because we've had 10 minutes of dead air.
Thanks, White Chocolate.
Thanks for tuning in to Wake and Make. Yeah, yes, my mime game. I appreciate that. Well, today is more of a relaxed fit episode. We're going to be cleaning up those past projects we've been working on in the past few episodes. I've been working on the metallic portion of Captain America here, for those of you who definitely couldn't hear me. Yes, Julian is a good audio technician when we need him to be. So I'm just working on getting this to have like a silvery metallic look on it. Behind the shield here, the belt buckle, any other metallic parts we find. That's what I've been working on. So, I was just basing in some light purple that I had some white mixed in to make our kind of grayish purplish tone. And I was just about to work some shadow back into it real quick. And this is that Enchantress Purple mixed with a bit of Trooper White. And as I said before, we're just going to go back and forth, try to get a little bit of a gradient here, and then we'll clean up that red at the top of the shield where we got a little bit of purple on it. And this is just a cleanup episode. I don't know how many of you guys have ADD brain like me, but I work on a bunch of different projects simultaneously. It's not a way I would suggest people work, but it's the way that, unfortunately, I do it. So I often have to come back and clean up projects and finish them off after the fact. And that can be challenging. I don't know how many of you guys find that challenging, but getting back in the rhythm you were once in while you were working on that project can be tricky, for me at least. So, yeah, I don't know about you guys. You find that also to be a little bit tricky, a little tough sometimes to get back into a project. I know I had to pull up a transcript of this video and figure out what paints I was using. That can be pretty tough if you don't remember trying to re-figure out what colors you were using to make sure it matches. Hopefully you can kind of see what we're going for there. There we are. And it says the mic is super choppy. Huh. Is that any better? You guys let me know. I don't know why we're having so much trouble today with the audio. I don't know if you guys can hear that any better. Sound off in chat. Let me know. how to fix this microphone. I unfortunately can't hear it. Ah, so it's not better. Still trashy. Got it. Tell you what, you guys give me a second. I'm going to see if I can figure out what's going on here. Hey, Julie. I don't know if maybe we need to try to switch it out with a different one. Sorry, I wish I knew more.
No, you're good. Let's see. I'm gonna listen in with my. Okay. What is that? Oh shit! All right, let me.
I'm on mute right now.
You're on mute. Okay. That's muted. What happened? Yeah. Oh shit! All right. I'm cleaning in the front deck. Oh shit.
We're currently working on the audio there, guys. Sorry about that.
Oof. All right, let me see. Yeah, let me see what I'm doing here. Let me figure this out, man. I'll give you a call back. Or hopefully they keep letting us know. It's good. All right. Bye.
Who is that?
That was Matt.
Ah. We're still testing out this audio. Still hear sound, so it could be the second mic on and picking up the sound. Ah.
Yep. I just went ahead and turned off the second one. This mic was on.
Ah, the second mic was on.
Yep. Oh, it was right next to me. Okay, so we're going to hear my conversation with Matt.
Oh, that's fun. Does that sound any better? I'm talking to Julian there. For you guys, Julian's in the shop here trying to help me out. He's the best audio technician we can afford.
Can you see anything? What is going on with this thing? All right, see if you can talk there.
All right, I think we might have adjusted it. Is that still sounding awful?
You know what? It's hitting your t-shirt. There you go.
Is that any better? Anybody? Any one of our few listeners there? That was old Julian's fingers.
That is not better.
Not better.
No, still distorted.
Still distorted.
Bringing this down a little bit.
I don't know if you guys can still hear any of this, any of me talking. No. I'm on mute. That's why I was kind of checking to see if another mic was on.
No, yeah, unmute yourself. See if we can get you unmuted.
This is another test for our audio.
Maybe.
Maybe. This is still testing. I really apologize for this. I will take the blame as current host of this show.
Ah, it's still crackling. Still crackling.
Still crackling. Still crackling.
The part that sucks is I really don't want to touch this. This part is where
What?
it really sucks here. I don't know which one's which. Number 2. The game's already down.
Hey, if I hit this stream starting soon button, will we still be able to test the audio?
No.
Oh.
I think here I've just now put down your level. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
I don't know, does that test at all? Or does that sound better at all?
Hey everybody, testing on 1 2. Hey everybody, testing on 1 2 1 2 3.
That's a test. 1 2. Can you hear that at all?
Nope, it is still messed up. Unfortunately. Why? Why is this happening?
That's fair enough. That's fair enough, white chocolate. Yeah, we're still in here testing. We're still not sure what's causing the crackling sound. Again, I do apologize. Not a problem I have seen before. Not something, sounds very quiet and muffled. We're still making some edits here. A couple adjustments.
I just lowered you down, like, super.
I don't know. We're attempting to lower the volume now to see if it can help out with some of the crackling.
Well,
At any point, if it sounds better, please let us know in chat. That'll be super helpful. Just to keep you guys a little entertained there. We don't get along. I fight for freedom, and I am a Nazi. Sorry. Thought I'd give you guys a little bit of hobby pants theater here. Little wake and make. Little wake and make show for you. I know, and it's not like me to be quiet, is it there, white chocolate? It says I'm very quiet. Oh yeah, you can see it. Far away. I sound very far away. Hopefully I can get closer to you. Need a big hug anyway. I could use a hug. Anybody want to get a little closer and give me a hug? Well, this is super fun, isn't it? We can be audio test pals on this one. I don't know if that's
no, it's not fun.
still working on it here. Well, since we have this moment, maybe some of you guys can sound off in the chat this week's projects you've been working on. Give me something to read, something something I can look at while we're waiting on this audio to get fixed here. Because I know a lot of you guys are working on some cool projects right now. Yes, that will be the name of this episode there, White Chocolate. Wake and Make episode, Fun with Audio, featuring Julian and Cryface.
Yay!
Looks like Space Wolf Dan is wanting to play BG3?
Oh yeah.
What game is that?
Baldur's Gate 3.
Oh, gotcha. Oh yeah, that's fun. Didn't they just have a big patch?
Oh yeah. That's what he's talking about. That patch is on.
I'll have to give that a try. I've been stuck on Assassin's Creed Valhalla this whole time for a few weeks. I got about 80% through it when it first came out, then the PS5 came out, and I got caught up in some other games. So now I'm going back, and I started over, but it's been a fun time.
Alright, I'm going to attempt to reset this thing.
All right, we're going to attempt to reset our audio device. Please bear with us. Looks like White Chocolate's going to be real sad once he makes his new Wolves army and they do drop Murderfang.
That's definitely going to happen.
I wonder why he would be sad if they do drop Murderfang.
Shouldn't be.
That's just more models to paint. You can tell Cryface is talking, but it's too quiet.
You know what? I think.
Still kind of looks like he's trying to kiss you.
Alright, should be back.
All right. Giving this microphone another test real quick. Make sure we might have fixed it. No audio at all.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna, it should be a second.
Be a second to reboot there.
It's good. It's good? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Ready to rock.
Hopefully we're sounding a little bit better now.
That's weird.
Audio is clear. Thanks there, Steve. So, for those of you who are just tuning in, today
We're going to try to be cleaning up as many models as we can get to from the past MCP projects. That's Marvel Crisis Protocol projects we've been working on. So I've just been working on Cap here, getting him closer to being done. Working on the metallic parts. This back of the shield I want to make kind of a silvery steel metallic, same thing with the belt buckle. And we'll go through this model here and find any other little parts we can accentuate. I think I might work on this shield a little bit today. So that's what we're doing. And I've been using Trooper White and this Enchantress Purple to make my Silverish Gray, and we've also been mixing out a little bit of the Seafarer Blue. So that's what we've got right here. So I'm just going to keep working on that. Like I said, it's a little bit of Seafarer Blue, a little bit of that purple, a little bit of this white. You can kind of see the gradient I'm making there on that palette, just a little bit. We're just going to work that in around this outline here. And we're just going to work in a little bit more and more of that white in certain areas. Like we're going to go right in this corner. And that'll be where our lightest part is. And then we're going to go in the opposite corner. And also little touches, just little dots in the other corners. Flip this sucker over. There we are. And then all we need to do on this belt buckle is just add a little bit of white. Oh, I got a little bit of that white on that brown, but that's okay. We'll touch that up a little bit later. Don't have to worry about it right now. What we could do, just to make it a little bit easier so that doesn't stand out too much, is try to wipe it off just a bit with the brush. And that ain't gonna work. That's all right, dude. We'll come back and clean that up with the brown after the fact. All right, let's jab a little touch of white right here. This belt buckle, this area is so small. You almost just need to paint it white to make it kind of look like a metallic, because it's mostly edge highlights. And what we'll do, now we're going to go back over to that shield, let that belt buckle dry a little bit. We're just going to continue work on this here. Work a little more white into that purple for us. It was getting a little thin. And if there's one way you can unthin some paint, is put a little white in it. Because white is chunky. Let me flip this guy over just a little bit. We're just going to keep working, lightening up that area, and then taking a mix that's got a little bit more of the purple in it and working that back into the shadowy areas. Make sure you wick off as much excess paint as you can so you don't get it running into the recesses, kind of like I do here. Flip it around. Remember to always flip your model so that you have the best access to the parts you're trying to paint. Don't just stay there in an uncomfortable position trying to make it work or trying to find the angle to move your brush to. What you really want to do is be moving that model around. Oop. And that's right, Dan. That is America's ass. I mean, Captain America's got to have a pretty nice booty, right? Like, you can't have someone named Captain America and put a bad booty on him. You know, we strive for idealism in this country. And our symbols need to have nice booties. It's important. Now we're just working a little more of that lighter version of our purple mix into that little area. There we go. Kind of see what we're working towards there. Giving us kind of a purpley, silvery kind of look that we're going for. And some people may say, hey, why did you pick purple? Why is purple the color you're going to be using right there? And that's because purple looks good everywhere. Anytime you have a question on what color to make a shadow or something to make it blend in with other stuff, oftentimes you can use purple. I've found that purple just fits into just about every color scheme. So I wouldn't exactly call it a magic bullet, but it is close. We got a little too much paint resting in that recess right there. It's fine to have a little bit of paint resting on that recess right there because it's facing up. That's not going to hurt us. It actually ends up just looking kind of like a highlight. I'll find a good angle for you guys here. We need to get a little more of this bottom area here. I'm going to go back to the slightly darker mix of that. It's got a little more purple in it. We're going to kind of work that into the areas where we want it to get darkest. This is still a very light color that we're using, but it's a little thinned, and it's going over such a dark purple that we're building up these little gradients here. Kind of see. All right, now I'm going to mix up a much thinner version of almost just that pure Enchantress purple. This is a highly, you can see just how thin that is. That's almost dirty water. And we're actually going to work that into the shadowed areas here. And it's this glazing, highlighting process that gets you the gradient you're looking for. And then how good that gradient comes out depends usually on how many layers you put in. It's not always the case. You could put 9 million layers and it still not look right. But generally speaking, the more layers you put in, the more smooth that gradient's going to look. I'm going to grab a slightly thicker version of that. We're going to run a little bit of a recess shade into some of these areas just to refine it a little bit. Set a little bit of a recess shade. We're adding a little bit of shadow. And again, we're not worrying too much about blends. We just want a little bit of that gradient. And then we can always refine more as we go. Keep hitting that hand. We're going to have to touch up that hand. But that's fun. That's part of it here. We're gonna hit some spots we're not supposed to. We're gonna make a few mistakes. The cool thing about that is we could just paint over it. There we are. Starting to get a little bit of a gradient there. You're starting to see a little bit of what we're going for. Now I'm going to take just about some of that pure Trooper White. That's also thinned down, you can see. We're going to make sure we don't have too much on our brush.
What's going on, everybody?
Hey, how's it going there, Hosen? Nice to see
Man,
you.
looks like you got your first full initiation to what it is to be a hobby goblin on YouTube today.
Oh, with the audio issues?
Oh yeah, buddy. We basically have it in our video description. Hey, microphones are hard.
Yes.
Been
They
a
can
constant
definitely be
struggle
difficult.
since we got started, for sure.
That is one of the hardest things about making content, for sure, is making sure audio is correct. Filmmaking in general, to be honest with you.
Well, you know, audio is the easiest way to ruin your product, for sure.
That is true.
Right? People are going to forgive, like, some of this, you know, occasionally painting out of focus or stuff like that. But, like, yeah, if they have to struggle to hear you, or if there's, like, an irritating, you know, background noise, quickest way to turn people off.
That's
So,
true.
Glad we got it fixed, for sure. I'm sure you said hello to everybody. I want to make sure I shout out my friends in here, too. I
Absolutely.
see White Chocolate, Space Wolf Dan.
Yeah, we got a few today.
See Steven straight up in here as well. What's going on? Looks like Steven's saying could be a little bit louder, so we might want to just speak up a bit.
I will do my best.
I definitely don't want to mess with any more audio settings.
Hey.
That's how I jack up audio, is by trying to fix it.
Ah, I see. Apparently, I just put on a microphone and I jack up audio. So Beat that.
Yeah, I have no idea how the camera mic turned back on.
Yeah, me neither.
Not a clue.
That's all right. I think we got it pretty much figured out. For right now, at least. One of these days, we'll get good at audio.
I don't need that kind of pressure.
Oh, Lord. And I'm still just working this light purple in here to act as my silver. And this is a hard angle to get to here. So if you're working on this model and you can't get a really good blend right there, forgive yourself. It'll be okay. You don't have to make everything perfect. Next time, do it in subassembly is kind of the rule. But that's not what we did. That's okay. Like I said, that's all going to be in shadow. Gives it kind of a dramatic look. I think we're going to pull that shadow in a little bit more to make it just a little bit darker. And we've also got another strap down here that we're going to have to work some brown on too. And that's part of this too. When you go through these models, you can see all of those little parts that maybe just slipped your mind that first time going through it. And also, you know, don't feel like you have to get everything. You decide when these are done. All right. Let me grab a slightly darker version of that mix. I'm going to work in a little bit more purple into that trooper white. And that's all we're doing here is working with those two paints and various versions of amounts of mixing. I'm not going to lie, this is a hard angle to get on camera with this shield here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start kind of curving out this shadow here. But by that I mean where the outsides, it's going to move closer to the center, and then towards the center of these bands, it's going to move outward right there. So we're going to have a little curve right here. And I'm finding that spot that's going to be the brightest. That's where my brightest highlight's going to be. And of course, as we move down here, it gets a little darker and darker. All right, we'll go back to our slightly lighter version of that. And I'm going to start in the center here and just pull my way out. Oh, we are starting to get there. And all I'm doing is just little lines moving from the darkest points into the center so that that's where my paint stops and gets the most concentrated. And this is one of those sections of the model. It's just, you know, we're dealing with a tough angle. And that's going to happen from time to time. You're going to be dealing with tough angles. It's the nature of painting a three-dimensional object instead of just painting on canvas. And I'm just working a little bit lighter, a little bit lighter, and then darkening that back down with a little bit of glazing. And as always, like I say, don't worry too much about your blends. You're not trying to get perfect blends. Sorry, you are trying to get purple blends, but you're not trying to get perfect blends. You just want a fairly okay gradient because, again, these are tabletop. These are made for playing. We're not winning a competition. And when you're working in the shadows, you just move in the opposite direction from the highlights. And that looks pretty cool so far. We can get a little bit brighter in some of those highlights there. That's right, Curse Cowboy. Perfection or nothing. No, that's a bad lesson. You go crazy doing that, trying to get perfection. Trust me, I've tried. And it will drive you crazy. One of the things we always say about around the studio is it's never done and it's never perfect. You're going to have to deal with it not being perfect. And you're going to have to just stop painting it at some point. You know? You'll probably never, there's always things you can do to improve or to touch up a project, but sometimes you just got to call it done. Oftentimes you have to call it done when it's due, and you got to deliver to the client if you're doing commission painting. That's looking pretty good there so far. Get this a little bit clearer for you guys. Now you can see my blends aren't great. They're pretty choppy. But as you zoom out, it starts to look a lot better. And these are made to be seen at arm's reach. These are toys made to play a game with. So most people aren't going to be looking at it this close. But, like I said, from a nice arm's reach, you get some nice good gradients and it looks pretty good on the old table there. All right. That's looking pretty sharp. All right, I'm going to take a quick 5, stretch my legs, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to do a little bit of recess shading, and then I think we're going to take a look at the back of that shield real quick. Thanks.
What do we have here? Ooh, shiny. Like what you got going on at the inside of that shield? That's looking really nice. Really nice volumetrics and all those muscle groups as well. And this guy's almost done.
Who's that sitting in my chair?
I've never heard of him. What's going on, Curse Cowboy? How are you? Those muscles almost look like he was made from a test tube. Yeah, almost. Nah, definitely looking very, very sharp. And again, a lot of these details you're seeing, like the muscle groups on the top of that leg there, those aren't hard sculpts. Those are very, very, very subtle sculpts. So you've done a really nice job of really bringing those muscle groups out.
Well, a lot of these things, it's also good to study some anatomy. You know, if you're going to be painting humans, study what humans look like.
Not interested.
Well, there you go. You know, as a 2D artist, you got to do a lot of that to figure out how to draw these things. That comes in handy a lot when painting these miniatures. A lot of the exercises you might do for 2D art will translate over really nicely. And again, we're using a lot of the same paint colors for these. So we're getting slight differences, but they should still look pretty cohesive once they're all done there.
Definitely. Definitely, definitely. Big trick as well is like knowing when you're at that good enough point, because it's also really easy to overwork something.
That's true.
You know, where you're just not happy with a tiny thing and you keep at it and you keep at it and you wind up getting further away from it looking good than actually nailing it down. I'm sure that's something everybody struggles with a little bit here and there.
Absolutely.
So really nice job on restraint here as well.
All right, let me hop back in that chair and get
All
some more
right.
painting in there.
By all means, I'll be happy to get out of your way.
And like I said, we're going to thin down that purple that we were just using. We're actually going to mix in a little bit of the azurine blue. We're going to do that for two reasons. One, to make it flow a little better. And two, to actually darken it down a little bit. Give it a little bit more of a bluish hue. A little more of that purple. That's going to give us a much richer purple to deal with here. You see, and that's super thin, super translucent. And what I want to do is I want to go down to these boots. Let me get this in focus. We're going to hit these boots and we're just going to hit the recesses in these and darken them down. And we can not be as detailed in these boots as we are on the rest of the model because it's the bottom of the model. It's fine if it starts to kind of, let's say, become a lower resolution at the bottom. And that's kind of a good way to think about this when you're painting, is what's in high resolution, what's the focus, and what's in low resolution. And low resolution are just things that you're not going to spend as much time on. You're not going to worry about getting the perfect blend there. You're not going to worry about your highlights being exactly perfect. We're always going to try to do the best we can. But as Jacob said, knowing when to stop is the key here. Kind of see, I'm just running that purple into the creases here. Some of these folds. And just defining these edges a little better. There we are. And now we could highlight this boot and do the same thing. That's going to draw more attention to it. So instead of highlighting, we're actually just darkening things down. And it's going to do essentially the same thing, just in reverse. You can kind of see how dark those boots get there. And if we feel like it, we can always come back, re-highlight a couple of these little areas, a couple of the up-facing areas, to re-establish even more contrast if we want to. Ooh. Make sure you're careful. And that's what these contrast or speed paints, or however you refer to them, really shine. is their flowability like this. Their ability to just come off the brush and get into those recesses like you need. That really comes in handy. In this top area, we can throw a little bit of this right where the boots and those pants meet to create a little bit more of a line, because we can always come back and re-highlight the top of that boot. And this also covers up any areas where we might have got a little red on our blue. So it's just coming in here and cleaning it up a little bit. Redefining edges, making things stick out a little better. But we're not worrying too much about perfection or cleanliness in this spot, because we're at the bottom of the model. Now I am going to brush in a little bit of this just to shade that out a little bit down there. We can always come back and clean up a bunch of this. Just going to push this purple into those recesses. That's looking pretty sharp. Now while we're here, I'm going to grab a little bit of that purple-white mixture. I'm going to highlight just a little bit on these muscle groups up at the top here, or on the torso. Just going to add a little bit of this purple. That's a little bit of a darker version. There we are. I just added a little extra. Just a little extra right there. Now let's grab some more of that purple. That dark with the blue mixture that we made. We're going to throw a little bit of a recess shade where this pouch is, just in the darkest areas. We're going to go over that little metal piece that buckles it down. We're just hitting this recess. And see, now that sticks out just a little bit more. That's looking pretty good. We got a little bit of white right there. All right. That's looking all right here so far. Now we're going to take a little bit of our red that we had used. That was our Hellspawn red, 2 thin coats. Hellspawn red. Hellspawn red. The most metal version of red that there is. Ooh. Grab a little paint from the top here. I don't recommend doing this. Do as I say, not as I do. Now you don't want to do what I just did, because the paint inside the lid oftentimes dries a little bit. But if you're a cheapskate like me, and you try to get as much use out of every little paint bottle as you possibly can, because you have a tendency to use too much paint when you do get paint out of the bottle, then by all means take it out of there. All right, so got that red that we were using. We're going to go and fix up this hand over here by this shield. Anywhere where we got a little bit of another color, we're just going to highlight it a little bit, clean up that red. This finger, and we're hitting the up facing sides of these hands, of these fingers I should say. There we go. And we're just going to go over that a couple more times to make sure we get a nice coverage over these fingers. And all I'm doing is putting a little bit of paint on the up facing side of these fingers right here. And the parts that stick out the most. There we are. We're also going to grab our Fanatic Orange, because that's what we had used for a highlight, if I remember correctly. We're going to go about a 50-50 mix with that in the red to start with. And that just punches it up a little bit, because as you see here on our hand, this underside right over here, we've got that red started going right there, but we need to punch that up with this orange. So like I said, it's about a 50-50 mix, just enough to add a little bit to it. We're just doing the up-facing stuff. And you see this orange, we mix that red in there, so it still reads as red. It's just a much brighter, more shocking red, so to speak. Right there. We're getting those knuckles. I think that's looking pretty good. And we're going to go pure Fanatic Orange. And this is where we're just going to top on the knuckles, just to make them a little brighter, and just a little line right there. And then as we go down, it gets darker and darker to the other fingers. We're also going to hit the top of this glove here. Let me flip this sucker over. We have a little ridge. I'm finding it difficult though to hit it by using the side of the brush. So we're gonna have to like draw this line. And I got a little more yet orange on there than I wanted, but we're gonna come back and clean that up real quick with the red, or with that red-orange mix that we had. Flip it over and go the other way. There we are. Let me see if I can get these knuckles just a little bit better, because they really need to kind of stick out. There's certain areas on the model you need to kind of stick out. Your out-facing sharp pointy bits, things like knuckles, things like cheekbones, a lot of times are going to stick out more than other things. Not always, but a lot of times. Alright, now let's see this other arm. We can add a little bit of highlight on that as well. And we're just going to follow that same line of highlight that's already on the arm. And this is just that mix of orange and the red. That makes a little bit of a punchier red. We're going to go back to the pure red this time, because I'm going to do some of these fingers here so we can see those. And again, we're just doing the up-facing parts. And this is similar to a recess shade the way you do it. But instead of trying to hit the recess, you're basically trying to hit the up-facing part of the recess. That looks pretty sharp. Let's highlight this little pouch on his glove. Again, we're currently using the pure Hellspawn Red. To kind of clean up and set where we plan on using a little bit more of that orange. And let's also work this upper area here. That ridge for the glove. Ooh, got a little bit of red on that light. That's easy to fix though. We already have white on our palette. And we've already got a little bit of that blue on our palette. And that's the only two colors we need to fix that little bit right there. There we are. All right. Let's grab our orange-red mix. We're going to do a little bit of highlighting on that hand we were just messing with. Just a little bit. There we go. Again, we're just following where that highlight already is. Following this highlight all the way down the arm. That's important because that's what gives you the look that things look right. That it doesn't freak out the eye when you look at it going, that feels wrong. If your highlights and your shadows are in as much the right spot as you can possibly get, you're not really probably going to get it perfect. That's okay. You don't have to get it perfect. Just get pretty close, and that's usually enough for the old eye. There we are. That's looking pretty good. Let's take that pure red again. Let's highlight up this stomach, the torso just a little bit with this pure red. And we're just punching it up a little bit. Like I said, just punching up this red because it's a little dark and desaturated, so we want it just a little bit brighter. It's already looking a lot better. Now a little bit of that orange-red mix. And you just got to be very careful how much you use of this. Just very sparingly. We're just kind of touching. Very careful. That's looking pretty good. Nice, nice. And just a touch of that pure orange. You definitely don't want to use too much of that pure orange because that's a good way to end up turning your red into an orange. This is just a highlight, and that's all it should act as. Just on the upmost facing areas. Oop. Clean off our brush. Let me thin down that orange just a little bit here. All right, now we're going to go over here to this knuckle. And this knuckle. And that area right there of the hand where it's the brightest. Get a little bit more of that orange here so we can touch These little knuckles. Little Captain America knuckles. Nice. As you see, that's coming along nice. Now we have that purple, blue, dark shadow mixture still together. We're going to go through and we're going to panel line a little bit of this costume here. Very carefully, right in between our highlights. We're just trying to get the areas where we might have gotten too much of the other colors into those recesses. That's looking good. All right. Let's get up underneath on the torso there. That looks good. A little bit of panel lining just helps define those edges. Again, we're using purple instead of black for this. It's very dark purple. It's almost black, but it just makes it a little bit more interesting. There we go. Let's see. There we go. Kind of give you a better idea of the full shot. At the distance, we're a little more likely to want. And we're going to grab a little bit of our red. We're just going to do a couple edge highlights on the boots, just to bring them out a little more. Just the very tops of them here. Super careful with the side of the brush. All the way around. I do this side or the second layer right here too. I just try to use the side of that brush. I say try because it's not always as easy as it sounds. Ooh. Okay, yeah, we're going to have to kind of draw this one on. There we go. Gonna do you these real quick. There we go. See if we can get this other edge. We're going to get the toes here just a little bit. Let those toes of the boots stand out just a little bit. There. Now obviously we haven't done the base up. That's looking pretty sharp. All right. Let me run to the restroom real quick. I'll be right back, guys. All right, I'm back. Now I'm going to throw some new gloves on, and then we're going to look at that shield and see if we can't spice it up a little bit. If we look at our model here, the back of that shield is looking a little plain in comparison to some of our other gradients and what have you. So I think we're going to throw a little bit of shadow right in between with a little bit of bounce light at the bottom and a highlight coming up from the top here. So that'll be pretty fun. It's nothing too complicated. We're not doing super complex non-metallic metal here. We're just kind of doing simpler non-metallic metal. We're going to be able to use all the colors that we were just using. I got these heavy-duty gloves. This is not a sponsor. Well, we got these guys here. Now these gloves, I like these quite a bit. They got these at Harbor Freight. They're a much tougher, more sturdier glove. I don't know how many of you guys have trouble with gloves ripping. If you paint with gloves, I suggest you paint with gloves so you don't get those dirty finger oils all over your model. But if you do paint with gloves, you probably have trouble with every once in a while you'll rip one as you're trying to put it on. Or if you're doing something and it catches on a piece of the model or something and rips off. I've had that happen quite a bit. But these gloves are sturdy. Hard to rip. They fit pretty snug, which is something that I like. So again, not a sponsor, but if you go to Harbor Freight and get those heavy duty gloves, I think you might like them. I think you might. I will say at the moment I'm currently having a hard time getting them on, but they are sturdy. At least they are sturdy. So you guys out there, as always, I'd be super grateful if you sounded off with some of the projects you're working on or looking forward to be working on. I know White Chocolate's been working on those wolves. Dan, not sure what you're working on. I'd love to know. Same thing with you, Steve, and Curse Cowboy. Anybody else that happens to be tuning into the stream, I'd love to see or to hear about the projects you're currently working on. And if you're just tuning in, we are cleaning up the Captain America that we worked on before. You know, I was just singing praises about these gloves, but I'm currently having a hard time getting them back on. So that's how that works sometimes. One second. There we go. All right, so back of this shield. We've got to make it ugly before we can make it look good. And the first thing we're going to do is grab a little bit of that purple. That purple then again is Enchantress Purple, 2 thin coats. And I want that really watered down. What we're going to do is just kind of define our shadows here. We're going to have a bigger highlight up at the top than we do at the bottom. So let's go ahead and ruin this paint job. And we're establishing just where our shadows are going to be. We'll worry about cleaning it up later. Establishing the shadow location. And since we're going to be painting a lot of this, we're not worried about messing up or anything like that. All right, we're going to grab a little more of that purple. Again, this is thinned down quite a bit. You can barely even see it against that black glove there. Just establishing that shadow, darkening it down, leaving a little area for our highlights. And we used blue with our white to create that white. So we're going to work a little bit of blue in that too. And that's our lighter blue. That's our seafarer blue mixed with a little bit of white. And as you can see, that's basically the color we had used before to establish that. A little bit more of that mix. Cover up this little bit of red here. And we're also going to go down at the bottom and start to create that bounce light. Just doing the same thing. We want this to be at the opposite. So if we're going directly up with the other one, we want to go directly down here. I'm putting this on a little thicker than I did up at the top there because we want to establish this bounce light pretty starkly. We're not going to have this as smooth of a gradient on the bottom here as we do at the top. Kind of see where that's going. We want that pretty opaque blue right down there so that we can kind of create a mixture with the purple. So I'm going to take a little bit of that blue that we have and I'm going to mix it with some of that purple. And this is going to be a little bit of an intermediary color we have to mix these two to work on our transition here. We're just smoothing out that transition. Nice. We do the same thing at the bottom. Now, we're going to mix a little more purple into that same mix and create a little bit darker of a shadow. And you can see that's starting to take a little shape there. And it's going to be a little bit of going back and forth, mixing with a little bit more blue, with a little bit more purple. Kind of smooth out this gradient here. Flip it over. We'll work on this side, the bottom here. going to go back and I'm going to grab some of the pure Seafarer Blue. I'm going to work that into that center area right there. We want this to look pretty good, but it ain't got to be perfect. And if you notice, I'm not focusing as much on the outside layers because we are going to want to edge highlight these. So if you work that shadow in a little bit more into the center, that'll make it a little bit easier for you in the future. Work some of this purple back in here. And I'm just lightly brushing this, going back and forth with my different colors, helping create this nice little gradient here. We're basically just going to do this for each one of these bands. That looks pretty cool. Let's refine our brightest highlight up here. We're going to take a little bit of pure white, thin down pretty good, because white's awful. Make sure we don't have too much paint on our brush. We're going to find the apex of this highlight here, which is going to be right across. We're going to work a spot of white in there. Over. This is a lot more difficult to do on camera than it will be for you guys. Ooh, whoops. So if this looks like it's super difficult, I hope you understand that it won't be as bad. Here we go. I'm just trying to deposit that paint exactly where I want it. Just pulling towards myself. And anywhere I happen to get it in this recess, I'm just going to come back and clean that up later. You're going to hear me say that a lot. Don't worry about it. You can always come back and clean it up later. Oop. That's looking pretty sharp. Alright, now we're going back to a white-blue mix. Seafarer blue and white. We're going to let that top dry. We're going to come back to the bottom here. Need a little bit of water. That's not coming off the brush very well. I'm trying to hit this line first. Gotta steady the old shake of hands. Anybody else got shaky hands out there and they try to do miniature painting? If so, maybe you can tell me why we do things to punish ourselves so much. Why is it that we feel like we must be so difficult? No, I'm just kidding. I do like doing difficult things. I think it's good for a person. We're going to try to get this outside rim. See if we can get this other outside rim. Remember, anywhere we mess up, we're just going to have to touch that up anyway. So we're not even worried about it. Now's a good time to go ahead, see if we can't clean up the recess just a little bit, as we've gotten a little bit of paint in there. We want to lean away from the white side. This way, if we get anything we don't want on there, it's going to end up on the red, which we still need to edge highlight anyway. Just make sure we lean into the red side. Just keep using this purple pen wash. See, we got a little we didn't in spots we didn't want, but we're going to go over that. Grab that white blue mix now. Make sure we only got as much on our brush as we want. There we go. Ugh. Model always wants to try to come off of there. And we got a little bit of purple right here on our white area. Let's grab some more white in that blue. There we go. Looking pretty sharp so far. And we need to do the same thing. Actually, let's work a little more of that purple into the darkest areas. And I'm doing this as a glaze. Just glazing this into the darkest areas. And this also is kind of a reverse edge highlight because I'm just adding a shadow layer into the center here and not messing around with the edges. That kind of refines and cleans up my edges just a little bit. That looks pretty good. We need to do the same thing with the reds here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our Fanatic Orange, because that's our highlight for our red. And just like we did with the white there, we're going to lay in some highlights. We want the highlights to match. So, big highlight at the top, little highlight at the bottom, you get the idea. We're going to go ahead and put more of this orange than we plan on keeping. That way we can come in with our reds, knock it back down. Try to stay away from the spots that we've already painted. Why do we paint that white part that's in the middle first? I don't know. We're not smart sometimes. Probably would have been easier to work our way from the inside out. But that's not what we did. A lot of this is just learning to deal with the decisions you make as you move through the painting process on a lot of these. And don't get discouraged if you do make a bad decision or a decision that could have been better. It's all right. You learn from that, you move on. All right, we're going to take this highlight all the way around the outside of this shield. And see, it's not perfect, but we're getting the feel of what we're going for, and that's really what's most important. Getting that feel down. I'm going to do a little bit more orange here, and then once we're done with this, we've got this kind of planned out, and we got it fairly opaque. Then we're going to come back with our pure red and work some of that in there. Start to blend out where these colors meet. And if we can work a little bit of an edge highlight on here, we'll be doing all right. You just got to make sure that your paint flows really well and that you've got as sharp as a point as you can possibly get on that sucker. All right. See if we can work a little bit on the edge here. All right, let's go ahead and grab some of that pure red, like I said before. We're going to start blending in between these two layers here, where we've got the darker red and the lighter red. We just want to focus our paint where that orange and that darker red meet. Go ahead and work that red all the way around and try to make sure it's concentrated in the areas that I want, which is in between the purple and the orange. Like I said, our orange highlight's getting smaller, so is our dark red shadow. We're getting more and more of that mid-tone red in there. All right, let's grab this outside area a little bit. More of that red. Make sure we wick the excess off of our brush. That's looking pretty good. Let's go over here to this other side. It's starting to look pretty good. There we are. You can see we're getting a little bit more of a three-dimensional look to it. It'll look nice and neat on the table, which is our goal. All right, let's grab a little bit. Now we're going to grab our mix of the orange and the red and use that to kind of work in a little bit of transitory color, a little bit of the in-between color. working this mixture in here to get that nice transitionary color. We'll come back with the pure orange to brighten this up even further. But I want to get pretty close to mostly red on here. We don't want a whole lot of that orange. We're also trying to make sure we get all the way out to the edges, and we're kind of throwing on a little edge highlight at the same time. Well, that's looking pretty sharp. All right, now back to the pure orange. Let's go ahead and hit this edge first. Pure orange. Nice. That's looking pretty sharp. Now I'm going to take some of this pure red, thin that down way, way down. Going to get this pretty much to a glaze, and we're just going to glaze that over both sides. Over where our highlight and our shadow is, just a little bit, not going all the way, but this is going to kind of blend in. Ooh, look at that shaky hand. This is just going to blend in those gradients for us, as well as push that a little bit further into red, less into orange. All right, that's looking pretty cool. We reinforce the shadows just a little bit. We're going to take our purple, mix it down to a glaze, and we're just going to reinforce some of the shadows in this red area here. And by doing this, we're also going to be reinforcing our edge highlights, because we're only putting this shadow in the middle section. Go over here too. Even in this white area. And that's part of the genius about working with purple shadows like we often do, is you can shadow all of the sections just about with that purple. It is really almost magical how well it works. There we go. And I'm going to take a little bit of pure white. I'm going to work it a little bit of that pure white right here at the bottom. There we go. I'm just using the tip of my brush. Getting it in there nice and neat. Let's fix, see we got a little bit of orange right there. We can fix that while we're at this. Run a little bit of white in there. Clean up where that highlight is. I get this edge as much as I can. Oof, got a little too much white right there. That's easy to fix though. We just take a little bit of our blue, thin it down to a glaze, pretty much. Just work that in there. Like I say, it's paint. You can always paint over it. Don't get bogged down in the details. Don't get bogged down in your minor mistakes. Just move on. Clean up what you need to. And if it's not perfect, it's all right. Unless you're entering Golden Demon or something along those lines, I wouldn't worry too much about it. Now let's run a little more white onto that star to get it to stand out a little better. I'm going to go more bounce highlight than other highlight on the star, just to give it a different kind of feel, different kind of angle. Make it look a little different from the rest of the shield. We do want this to be mostly white though. Make sure we get those edges real nice to make that star stand out. And let's take a little bit of a mix between the blue and the white and work a little bit of a transitionary color in there. We're not going all the way to the edge because we're going to want to preserve that edge highlight. Need a little bit more blue in that mix. All right. And personally, I think that looks pretty cool. I'm going to grab a little bit more orange. This is very thin, very watery. I'm just punching up that highlight. And that's all it really takes. We've got a cooler looking shield now. It's got a little bit of a highlight on it. We can even take just a little bit of yellow mix in with our orange and get just a little bit more of a brighter orange. To be in our brightest spots here. All right. I think that looks pretty good for the shield. We could go further. We could refine those gradients. We could do some more edge highlights, but I think that looks pretty good for right now. That looks pretty sharp, I think. Now for a battle-ready model, we could probably just about call it here. I think that's good enough to play with. Now, obviously, I've got to do the base, and that isn't going to be too complicated, but I want to make sure I do all the bases around the same time, so that way they all kind of match. And I haven't quite decided exactly what I'm going to do for the base on that just yet. That's looking pretty sharp. All right, let me stretch my legs real quick, and then I'm going to see about taking a look at the next model. All right, hold on one second, guys. I'll be right back.
All right, doing the little check-in. Yeah, I was wondering what you were going to do with that shield. That looks great, dude. Really nice use of purple in those shadows.
And it's not, as I was explaining, it's not super hard to do. I didn't go crazy with getting those blends exactly perfect. We really just want to give an idea of that non-metallic metal at arm's reach. Because as I keep saying, these are battle-ready models. These are supposed to be good to play. A little bit more than battle-ready, but you get the idea.
Yeah, definitely. And a lot of times, you know, like I've seen this with kind of 3 points of light on it, but this just goes to show that, like, you know, you just, like you said, want to sell the effect, right? There's not a right or wrong way to do it. Matter of fact, I think this looks better than a lot of the stuff I've seen.
Well, yeah, I've seen a lot of models where you go a little too far on the shield and you've got too many different points of light. Now, if you look online and you look for reference photo, you'll see them look like that. You'll see them have 5 different points where it's separating between highlight and shadow. But for something like this, we would just want to give it a nice little extra bounce light, make it look kind of cool when you're staring at it on the table.
Yeah, super sharp, dude. Super, super sharp.
I always enjoy it when Hosen comes by and takes a look at my models, tells me how much of an awesome painter I am. No, it's good to have somebody else, especially someone whose work you respect, take a look at your models. Your family will always tell you how great they look, but sometimes you need someone to tell you exactly what's going on. So now we're going to take a look at old Red Skull here. We left him in a spot where he was almost done as well. Get some of this poster tack. Remember, we had him split up into 2 separate pieces here. I'm going to grab a little bit of poster tack and stick on his torso just so he sticks a little better. just a small amount. Stuff likes to stick to your gloves. Just a little bit. Just going to stick it right on top there. There we go. All right. And we went a little overboard with his face there, I think. I think we need to bring back a little bit of that red in there onto that side where the light isn't hitting it. So first, to do that, we've got to take some purple. Imagine that. We're going to be using more purple. Purple is like the magic color, I swear. All right, we want to just darken this on this side just a little bit. All right. Faces are always difficult. I'm starting in the recesses. And I'll work my way around. We'll have to do these teeth at some point here. Try to get right under that lip there. There we go. Now, let's grab our red. We're going to mix a little bit of purple in it, just like we did before. Go ahead and pull him off there. I'm going to push this red in further a little bit. So there's a little more of it showing on this side of the model. And the back end here that's going to be facing away from that light, we want to try to work a little red into it. Back of this ear here. And you see we're starting to get a little bit more red. So that when you turn it, you can see a little bit more. I think we can take that purple in just even more. All right, now you see we have quite a bit more of that purple. And that gives me room to add more of that red coming in. That's looking pretty good there. Now we're going to take a little bit of that blue that we originally worked with, that seafoam actually. And I'm just going to kind of glaze a little bit in there. And now I'm going to take a little bit of that orange-red mix, and we're going to work in a quick highlight right at the apex of this reverse hero shot here. It's a little bit sloppy, but we're going to come back and smooth that out. Grab a little more of that. Make sure we got it pretty opaque right there where we want it mostly. That's looking pretty sharp. You can also take that mixture and highlight this a little bit, this belt buckle. See how that's looking. Let's get some of that pure red, and now we're going to go and we're going to blend out that highlight that we just put at the top there. And we're actually going to go over that highlight with this red because it's not 100% opaque. So it'll lighten up the areas around it while also darkening down the actual highlight we did just a slight bit to make it look a little more red and less orange. There we go. That's looking a little sharp. I like it a little bit better. Still very dark in some areas, and there's some questions I have on those boots. I'm still not sure exactly what I'm going to do on the boot area there. Kind of the same thing with those ribs. Let's try to do the same black we did on cap. That was actually purple. Got our lilac color that we kind of use as a highlight. Make sure we hold at our hero angle here. Figure out where our highlights are going to be. We always sketch them in first. Alright, I'm going to do the same thing on the other foot here. And this is a lot lighter than it's going to be at the end, but I always usually sketch a little bit lighter than what I want. That way I have room to kind of darken down. All right, let's create a slight transitionary color between our lilac and our purple. And a slightly lighter transitionary color. We're going to do the same thing on the other foot over here. And we'll go back to our darker color. There we are. And again, this is down here on the feet and the shoes, so we're not worrying as much really at all about how great our gradients look or anything along those lines. We just want the light in roughly the right spots. It's looking okay so far. See how much we can get on this other foot here. This one can be a lot darker because it's covered up mostly by that coat. That looks pretty good. Looking pretty sharp. And I'm still not sure about these ribs on the pants right there. What color those need to be. It's a good question. It's a good question. I think the hands, we're going to use the same purple as we did on the boots. Make it look like he's got gloves on. We're just going to lay down some of that dark purple. We're not going to be too super neat with it. Oop. Using the side of our brush here to kind of just grab the raised areas. We're just being super loose. I just want a little bit of this purple all over that glove. So, I can add a little bit of white to that mix and start to define some of the shapes there. That's our hero shot. So, I'm going to throw some highlight here. Each one of these fingers. The palm area. And the thumb. We're going to flip it over just a little bit. Grab these knuckles. And then we'll add a little more white. Grab these knuckles and fingers again. The thumb area. And the one part of the palm. Very light. Now I'm going to make a really thin wash or glaze and just glaze that black back over everything to kind of smooth it out. Let's take a look at these together. They look like they could go together. That's looking pretty good for right now. Well, we've got a lot more to do on the Iron Man, but I think these two guys can have the bases done, aside from his little leg thingies. I'll have to figure those out. But these two guys can have the bases done and they can be ready to play on. So that's super slick. Super slick. All right. Just as a refresher, this is our Iron Man. He's got a little ways to go. I think we'll take another episode on him to really get in there and do the metallic parts, the gray metallic parts. Thank you there, Steve. I appreciate that. Steve says they look great. I appreciate it. And again, I just want these to be able to play nicely, to look pretty good on a table. I'm not winning any awards with them. Not bad, not bad. The OSL on the face is still a little wonky, but it'll do for now. And one of these days, I'll come back and we'll do a punch-up episode on how to take something from something like this to maybe up one more stage where you maybe could win a smaller competition with it. I do appreciate all of you guys coming out and watching me out every Monday. It's super awesome to have you guys checking out my work, checking out the old hobby goblins. I promise we'll have some more interesting stuff too coming up here pretty soon. I got some projects in the works that I'm getting planned on to share with you guys. I've got some Trench Crusade projects that I think will be pretty fun. Let's see, I've got a new sword that I'm working on right now, a new chain sword that we're going to be putting up here at Counterspell. That's going to be painted the colors of Counterspell. So if you do live in the Jacksonville area, it'd be super awesome for you to come in, say hey, what's up to all the rest of the goblins out here, and check out some of the weapons and stuff that we've worked on. They're super cool. You can handle them, and they'll always bring a smile to your face there. But again, I do appreciate everything, and we'll see you guys next Monday. Awesome. Thanks again.